Hey guys, I'm here with Dani from WAG.
Hi.
You may recognize her Australian accent from our MyFitnessPal tutorials or seen her name pop up if you're subscribed to our newsletter. This is her in the flesh right now. Today, we are going to tackle the hardest thing to do when you're tracking your macros or trying to be on top of any type of nutrition plan. That's eating out at restaurants. Today we're going to a Mexican restaurant and we're going to go over all the strategies to help you make the best decisions that align with your goals, like how to avoid completely eating all the chips and salsa that's at the table because it's so delicious and so tempting, and so much more. So stay tuned. I'm actually so pumped that we're going to Lupe Tortilla right now because I'm starving. And Lupe fajitas are the best. Wait, you're going in this side, bro. What does Dani love about Mexican food is what I want to know.
Well, you know, I'm still new to Mexican food. It's not a huge thing in my homeland.
Good that you just moved to Austin, Texas, where there's Mexican food everywhere.
Yes. Well, I was just living in California, so that Mexican food is different to this Mexican food.
What's your favorite thing to eat?
Fajitas. To go.
Like a menu to take to go. Imagine this broke, that would suck. So Lupe Tortilla is my favorite Mexican restaurant that's beside our house in Austin, Texas. It's super easy. They have tons of different options on their menu. We ended up getting a ton of stuff to go just because we're going to go over all the ways that you can order at a restaurant at my house so that we can give you guys the best tips possible. So I know we're not at the Mexican restaurant, but we did get our food to go, and we're gonna talk about strategies if we were sitting at the Mexican restaurant, as if somebody was, you know, Dani was my waitress and she's serving me. These are the types of strategies that we're talking about today, even though we're at my house. We are going to start with chips and salsa. I mean, have you ever been to a Mexican restaurant and you're just absolutely starving and you get to the table and you see this like heaping bowl of chips right there and you're just like, I could eat this whole bowl easily, right? Easily. And it wouldn't even dent my hunger. And this is probably, could you estimate how many calories or carbs or a lot?
I actually look at these and just see fat.
Because I think sometimes people might not realize is there's sometimes baked tortilla chips, sometimes fried tortilla chips. Most times when you go to restaurants, they're actually like frying them in their deep fryer before they come out to the table. So they're piping hot and extra, extra crispy. So it actually has more fat than you'd think, even though considering that they're actually tortilla chips. What I like to do when first thing I get to the restaurant, if I'm not trying to, you know, it's either I'm gonna take my serving size and put it on my plate. Like I say I'm gonna have 15 tortilla chips. I'll take out 15 tortilla chips, put it on my plate. Salsa doesn't have that many calories or macros in it, so you're kind of safe there. But I'll take my serving and then ask them to take the tortilla chips off the plate, or off the table completely.
Yeah, and I'll always opt for the salsa because sometimes I'll put the sour cream or the guacamole, and those are significantly higher calorie dipping sides for your chips.
Right.
So if you're gonna have your chips, that's awesome. You can mitigate it a little bit by having the salsa because the salsa is like 1 to 3 carbs per serve kind of thing.
Right. I think also when you're having your tortilla chips, I sometimes will ask the server to bring them back out when I'm eating my actual meal instead of just sitting there waiting for my food. I'm hungry and it's like you're gonna be picking at it while you're having conversation and you're almost doing it like unconsciously. You don't even realize that you're picking at the tortilla chips and all of a sudden they're all gone. So if I get like fajitas or I like to have that crunch in my Mexican dish, then I'll ask them to bring the chips back out, but just get them off the table. Out of sight really does mean out of mind in this scenario.
The chips are definitely like the #1 saboteur.
Saboteur, I like that.
Saboteur at a Mexican restaurant. I think they're like the #1 challenge of the whole experience.
So we're gonna move on to appetizers. This is actually our appetizer. This, I really honestly forget the name of this. It's like a name that when you go to a Mexican restaurant and you wanna pronounce it and you're just like embarrassed that you're gonna say it probably stupid.
Do you want me to go and Google it?
No, it's okay. We can put it in the notes. But this is like a, It's like a shrimp avocado salsa dish. So what we wanted to talk about here is when you're going to a restaurant, I think a lot of times when you're trying to stay on top of your nutrition plan, a lot of people complain that, you know, I want to go to a restaurant and enjoy social occasions with my friends, and we can all try like a little bit of the same things and enjoy the experience together. So when opting for an appetizer, that's an opportunity for you to share with your friends. This one we chose specifically because it's lower carb, and if you're going to opt for tortilla chips later, or a burrito, or something with a tortilla, a flour tortilla or a corn tortilla, this really gives you an option to have more of that later. Or maybe if you're having a margarita. Yeah. Moving on to the main course. I think both Dani and I most prefer to order fajitas. This is just like, you can get the most variety in what you want to have on your plate, what you're in the mood for, or what is going to help you meet your nutrition goals. So focus on the protein. You can get extra protein, steak, extra steak. We actually got double steak. I'll pull out the meat.
And not everyone is going for low fat. So you also get all the options of cheese, sour cream, avocado. Oh, this looks good. You
can get a bunch of stir-fried vegetables that can add some volume to your meal. This is actually really great white meat chicken. So you know that that's going to be, if you don't have as much fat to work with, you can get that. I would be careful though, because going to Mexican restaurants, sometimes their fajita chicken is a mix of between dark and white meat. So that actually sometimes is more fat than something like a flank steak or the steak option. So
steaks take like 10 seconds to look at it.
Yeah, or ask the waiter and be like, hey, is it dark meat or white meat, or is it just white meat, that kind of thing. They usually might even have the option of getting just white meat. Maybe not, but in that case, getting the steak is almost always in a fajita dish a leaner cut of steak. Usually.
You can ask, just ask. Don't be afraid to ask if they know what cut of meat they use. Because chicken is safer if you're unsure and you really want to be accurate, but if you can check, you might find that the steak is totally that cut.
Yeah.
And I also find that it's often, this one's actually looks really good, but oftentimes fajita meat can be really oily and they just add extra oil when they're cooking. So I like to pat it off with a paper towel before I eat it, just to take at least like 10 grams of it off.
I also often will just ask them to go really light on the oil or not use any oil at all. Yep. I know if any of you are listening have trouble asking for what you want at restaurants, it can be a little bit uncomfortable to just ask for a bunch of suggestions. Most restaurants just don't mind and they really want you to have a positive experience. So they'd rather you order what you want and come back again than you not order there and never go back there again. So I encourage you to just push through that discomfort and ask for the substitutions that you're looking for. Something that's also amazing about fajitas, we talked about protein, so you can have different types of protein. We did chicken and steak. You could also get shrimp, and so you have very much variety in terms of what protein sources you want, but you also get some variety in carb options. So you can go for this is gonna be a corn tortilla. So we've got a corn tortilla here. It's a little bit smaller, but this is going to be significantly less carbs than a flour tortilla. So it usually has around 10 grams of carbs per corn tortilla.
Is that just because of the size, or
it's made with corn? Cicadas. Cicada season in Austin right now. So corn tortillas are generally going to be 10 grams of carbs per tortilla, and a flour tortilla, which is this really big one here underneath, I can't even pull it out because it's really big, but it's always going to be much bigger, and it's going to have definitely more carbs in it. The thing is too that most people don't realize is it's sometimes also going to have more fat in it. A flour tortilla can run, oh yeah, look
how big that is. I think that this can bump you up to like 40 carbs.
Yeah, can be 40 carbs and sometimes from like 5 to 10 fat is in the flour tortilla. It's absolutely delicious, especially from LUPE. They have actually the best flour tortillas ever, but definitely know that you have the options of getting corn tortillas or flour tortillas. So really I could have 4 or 5 of these for the amount of carbohydrates that I'm gonna get in the flour tortilla. And for me, it's really just about having like a vessel to eat the rest of the food in. It's not as much about the tortilla itself. So I usually opt for corn.
For me, it's all about the tortilla.
So she's gonna save up and she's gonna opt for that.
I opt for this. I mean, they both taste good, so.
Then, so we talked about protein, we talked about carbs, how you can go high carb, low carb, high fat, low fat with protein sources. Now we're gonna talk a little bit about the sides, which also gives you some options for what you want. If you wanna go lower fat for the rest of the meal, you can just put some salsa on it and have the vegetables. We also have this pico de gallo, which is really delicious, going to be definitely lower fat, lower carb. Beans, higher carb, higher fat. Rice, you can opt for rice or not for rice. If you're going to be inputting this in any type of MyFitnessPal, just search Mexican rice. That's usually the entry that's going to be best. Then the deliciousness of guacamole.
Yeah.
Guacamole, you have the option to use a lot or to use a little. That's what I love about fajitas. It's like I can go save it up and I have lower carb, higher fat. I didn't eat those tortilla chips at the beginning, so I have lots of space to work with. You also got your sour cream and your cheese.
Both options are just like fat and protein. So I think what's really cool about Mexican food and tracking it is that almost every ingredient is pretty much like a single source of macro. Or it's protein and fat. But it's like, it's really easy to track because they're single sources. They're not like really complicated blends of macronutrients.
Which makes it really simple, not just with fajitas. If you're gonna get a taco, it makes it really simple to look at what's inside your taco or look at the ingredient list that's on the menu and break it down by each ingredient and just add each ingredient one at a time. And it's gonna be an estimation no matter what, but at least you're not completely disregarding your goals altogether and just completely overeating and feeling not so good the next day.
Even though you're trying to make the best decision that you can when you're eating in a Mexican restaurant, just remember it's super high sodium and salty. So you may still wake up the next morning heavier. And that's okay, like that's gonna pass. I just wanted to note that.
Scale fluctuations can happen all the time. Daily weight fluctuations are not a bearing on long-term progress. So just know that you've eaten out at a restaurant, there could be extra salt, and Mexican food just generally is saltier than other foods. So there still could be weight fluctuations the next day, even if you were trying your best. And just don't get frustrated like, oh, I went to the restaurant, but I tracked every single thing I ate. I can't believe the scale's gone up. Try and just remember, if that's gonna happen, then just don't get on the scale the next day. It's just not even worth it. Go right back to your regular eating and it's going to be
It's going to pass.
It's gonna pass and it's gonna just go back to normal. Yeah. We opted for having things that are like the freshest and simplest ingredients just to make it easier to order at a Mexican restaurant, but things that you won't see here or that you see that we didn't order that we could have are things like chimichangas is definitely going to mean that it was deep fried. Things like words like chorizo or queso fresco, just chorizo. Cheesy anything. It's not that we don't want you to have it or that you shouldn't have it. It's just if you're not in control of how much, it can easily go from 5 or 10 grams of fat to 30 or 40 really quickly and faster than you realize.
I know that everyone loves the refried beans, but they're carbs fried in lard, and that's not anything to be like afraid of, but for my goals, and if you're watching this video, you're probably conscious about the amount of calories or the quality of the food that you're eating at a restaurant, so it's probably in your best interest to avoid them.
So the cool thing about getting this to go is that I'm able to have this at home, and now I can comfortably, without being embarrassed or any embarrassment at all, I can weigh out exactly how much food I'm going to have, and I can set this as a recipe in MyFitnessPal, and then next time when I actually go to the restaurant, I can just use that recipe, and maybe it won't be exactly the same, but I can know how much of each that I put on at home and try and recreate that when I get to the restaurant. Or I can take an entire meal, I can weigh it out at home, and then when I get that whole meal and eat the whole meal, I know all of the nutrition information that's gonna be in there. Don't have to bring my food scale, no awkwardness, and I can just really be present and enjoy the social occasion.
Yeah, it just makes it easier. Like, it's all about making it easier as you go.
This is just an introduction into how to eat at a Mexican restaurant. We have an infographic that gives you much more information, a bunch of different strategies. This was just kind of like a brief overview of a couple strategies that would work for you, but definitely check out the infographic, save it, use it anytime you go to a Mexican restaurant.
And we've also got how to track a Chipotle if you're specifically after Chipotle.
Absolutely. Next time. Later.